Hi there, my name is Arron Gill. Welcome to 100 Stories Deep. Today I'm going to be reading The Nod by Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi as part of the anthology Bare Lit. And I've chosen this story because I think it's a really clear story about anti-blackness and our presumptions of people that we know and also might meet in the future as well. So yeah, that's The Nod by Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi. One thing you must understand from the onset is that out here in Britain there is an idea, something felt, of being one, of we're in this together among black folks. Call it the black nation for want of a better term. At times it can feel tighter than tribes in an African sense. Sometimes it is as intense as religion. In fact, out here, some people will call you sister or brother, the way black people at home do in churches. Within the nation, there are certain expectations and understandings, not imposed but understood. When strangers share experiences, they're amazed how similar their sensibilities are, regardless whether they come from the islands, from the continent, or from the Americas. One of the outward manifestations of the nation is the nod. Now, when I arrived at this party, the guests were so natural around me, I forgot myself. I forgot myself because I did not see myself in their eyes. It is true that we see ourselves in the eyes of others. I did not realise this until I came to Britain. When they look at you, people's eyes are mirrors. The problem is, eyes are constant mirrors, and you are always looking at yourself. But as I said, on this occasion, I was simply not there in the guests' eyes, and so I did not look around to see how many other people were like me at the party. That is the other thing. Out here, when you're different, especially when you've just come from your home country, when you arrive at an unfamiliar place or an event, your eyes can't help scanning the guests, the crowd, the seminar group for someone like you, or for the nation. Actually, we do it on the road too. It's a reflex, right? I guess we do it because there is warmth in numbers. There is also the assurance that since there are others like you, then your way of being, your behaviour on that occasion, will not carry the burden of being the reference for all your kind's way of being. Once you have identified someone, you wait to catch their eye. In most cases, when you do, you smile or nod. Sometimes, however, you catch an eye that panics. Oh no, not one of you. Or another that flashes. Fuck off. Some folks will avoid catching your eye intentionally and stay well clear of you. But in most cases there is a flicker, an acknowledgement of, I'm glad you're here too. Someone gave it a name. It is called the nod. But as I said earlier, when I arrived at this party I was made so comfortable I did not look around for the nation. And that is when things went wrong. See, I didn't see her. I didn't give her the nod. Looking back now, I suspect that even if I had seen her, I might not have identified her. I think she saw me arrive, tried to catch my eye, but I glanced past at her. She must have thought I was one of those fuck off types. And in terms of slights within the nation, that is one of the worst. Unfortunately for me, she was not the kind of sister you blanked and got away with. The party was in one of those rich areas where children stop playing and stare at you as you walk past. And if you catch them at it, they smile. Hello. Nothing rude, just that they don't often see people like you. Even though I had just arrived in the country and everywhere England looked the same to me. I mean, houses on a street tend to look similar because builders in this country are so lazy. At so many levels, it's not even funny. I could tell that this was an exclusive area from the distances the houses shrunk from the road. Such large compounds you could build a second house. Hedges grew untamed. In poor areas, hedges are clipped to diminutive heights. You let your hedge grow high, your neighbours complain to the council that it blocks the sun. Along the way, I came to parts of the village where woods was so dense it felt like walking in a forest. That's how wealthy this place was. When I arrived, Annabelle's family were waiting. You would think I was a long-lost cousin. Everyone knew my name. It's like they'd been waiting. Let me take your coat, Lucky. Did you have a good journey in the train? Cup of tea, Lucky? Autumn's getting pretty nippy. Ah, British weather. It must be awful for you. Red or white wine? Try this cake, Lucky. Ooh, I love your dress. You didn't get lost, did you? We were worried. But growing up in Uganda, I tell you, it can be treacherous in Britain. Now, I was brought up with the notion that as a visitor, it's rude to say no to food. Especially when someone brings it to you. So I accepted everything the women brought to me, and they gave me a lot. Try this, Lucky. You're going to love this meringue. Piece of lasagna. That's quiche. This is elderflower, you must try it. In the end, there were plates and plates and glasses around me. Don't misunderstand me, it was mostly new food and I was eager to try it all. But I was worried that the numerous plates made me look gluttonous. This is why Ugandans in Britain will tell you that the British did not give your culture via the visa. Leave it at home. Then Annabelle came to my rescue. Oh my God, Lucky. They're going to feed you to death. Here. She picked up the plates. Come with me. She walked me to the kitchen. Put all that food away and get yourself something you really want to eat. She dumped the food on the work surfaces and walked back to the garden where her engagement party was held. But me, I was still too Ugandan. As soon as she left the kitchen, I poured the food away in the bin. Yes, wasting food is abominable. But no way I was going to leave my rudeness displayed like that. What if the people who served it to me saw that I had rejected their food? I was reaching for the chocolate cake when a voice came from behind me. You have such lovely skin. I glanced at her, smiled, thank you, and turned back to the chocolate cake. It must be all that sun in Africa. The weather in this country is not right for our skin. Yes, I agreed without looking at her. My eyes were so focused on the delicate job of balancing a slice of cake on a spatula towards my plate that I did not register the words. Our skin. In fact, when my slice was safe on the plate, I added, my grandmother says that sweat is the best moisturiser, to reinforce the notion that the sun in Africa was really good for the skin. Truth be told, that was a lie. It was not my grandmother, but it was my mother. My mother is what they call New Age in Britain, but the word grandmother gave it a je ne sais quoi. Let's call it the weight of African wisdom. It's something I turn on sometimes in Britain, especially when among the nation, to play up on the difference, African age-old wisdom, often common sense, versus Western research, the silly ones. Truth is, my grandmother is a city girl. She swears by Yardley products. Soaps, talcum powder, deodorant and perfume. When she strays from Yardley, she goes to Avon. She would be seriously offended if she found out that I had appropriated what she calls my mother's madness to her. Then I heard the woman's our skin and stopped. That phrase came straight out of the nation. That's where we say our this and our that. I looked at her properly. My mind was frantic. Is she a Zimbabwean, South African, or Namibian white? That's where my mind goes when I meet white Africans in Britain. But white Africans would never say our skin. They'll say our weather, our economies, our politics, but never our skins. What I did not realise was that she could see every wave of my frantic thoughts in my eyes as I tried to place her. Then I began to see traces of the sub-Sahara in her. It had been there all along if I had looked past the skin. Then I saw the anger, the how dare you search for my blackness. So, I'm not black enough. In that moment when I realised that she had seen my realisation, we spoke of just the eyes. Hers fiery with injured indignation, mine withering from the mortification, until she relented and the glare in her eyes flickered to a shade of, "Okay, I'll let you off this time," and smiled. "Really?" in response to my grandmother's wisdom, as if her eyes had not been haranguing me. I flashed a sister smile. I was wont to overdo this camaraderie now. "Well, sweat is nature's moisturiser. People don't realise. It has a perfect pH and moisturises the skin from within, softening below flayers. These creams we buy only work on the surface. They don't even penetrate the top layer. Our skin needs to sweat regularly." I turned on the conspiratorial tone when to use in the nation when we discuss food. "Don't eat anything out of a tin. Only cook from fresh. Health. Watch out, we put on a ton of weight in the winter. Take vitamin D supplements for the bones. Go home to the islands or to the continent at least once a year to get proper sunshine and eat proper food to rejuvenate the body. For some reason, weight drops off when we go home, no matter how much we eat. And products specific for our bodies. Skin, hair, or jeans that don't fit our thighs but don't betray our butts when we sit down and fit around the waists at the same time. I go to the sauna 4 days a week and drink lots of water just to sweat. But when I step out, my skin is really soft to touch. Besides, I've not found the right moisturiser. I'll just use Vaseline. That was true at the time. For some reason, the air in Britain made my skin so dry. Moisturisers marked for very dry skin lasted only a few minutes and my skin would be dry again. The hands were desiccated, I swear. I resorted to applying cream, waiting for a few minutes, applying again, and then using Vaseline petroleum jelly to lock it in. It took me a while to discover the ethnic beauty shops in Hume, which had appropriate creams. I thus expected her to step in and recommend a few moisturisers. She did not. Instead, she reached for the chocolate cake, cut a piece, turned around and leaned in against the work surface. I waited as she bit into the cake because I could see that she was about to say something. I dared not interrupt, especially after my faux pas. I've always wondered which one of my parents was black. I put my cake down. She had me by the scruff of my neck. The thing is about the nation's sensibilities is that sometimes you can take blackness too seriously and it can be pretty heavy to carry. Like black guilt. Knife crime in London. In that moment, I was at once African, Caribbean and African American men who had travelled to Britain, had children but for whatever reason did not bring them up. Don't ask why men. Black guilt screamed absent fathers. What could I say to her? I concentrated on looking guilty. I am now sure my father was African, a student. He was either from Liberia or Sierra Leone. Though now I knew that he could have been a coloured from South Africa because obviously I am too pale. There was accusation in obviously. Obviously you did not notice me, and an emphasis on too pale. Too pale to be black. Something, I don't know what, made me say, some Africans, especially in Zimbabwe and other southern Africans, can be really pale. Her eyes flashed at me. Don't correct me. But she carried on. He finished his studies and returned to Africa. At the time, Africans that came to Britain were students and could not wait to go back to their countries after courses. My mother was young, adventurous and no doubt Irish. He did not realise that she was pregnant when he had left, and she did not know that his address in Africa. I imagined her as a child, lying in bed constructing her family. She began with the father and made him black. Then her mother, who she had made white. She constructed the circumstances of her birth and how she ended up whoever she was at the time. But as she grew older and more knowledgeable, she was forced to change things, make specific adjustments to her parents in order to fit in what she looked like and at the time of her birth. I was confident that at one time her father had been Caribbean, complete with an island. And he had also been African American with a state and had an accent. However, she had now settled in Africa and she was not going to be moved. Teta, is a Liberian name. Oh! I was put straight. Africa was guilty. I smiled. What a lovely name! That was the first thing that came out of my mouth, and I regretted it. Why was everything that came out of my mouth either woefully inadequate or patronising? I should have said, "Nice to meet you, Teta. My name is Lucky," and shaken her hand. It was the 50s, she went on. In them days, more Irish women had relationships with black men. But she was young and could not bring up a child on her own. She gave me up for adoption. The 50s were like a rope thrown to me. I clung onto it. "You don't look like you were born in the 50s, I said, and it was true. She didn't look a year older than 40. Honestly, I thought you was in your 30s. "Oh, you're so kind." But Teta was not interested in looking young. She had found me, and I had blanked her. Then I dared to search her body for blackness. I was African. I was going to pay for her abandonment as well. If you look at my wedding pictures, there are no black people. My husband is Italian and comes from a large family. There were so many people at the wedding, people imagined it was both of our families. But of course, deep down they were asking, where are her black folks? "It's your moment, Teta." I did not see Brenda, Annabelle's mother. She came in. She grabbed Teta's hand and steered her towards the door. "Wait till you hear Teta sing." Brenda winked at me. There was something about the way Brenda had led Teta away, as if I was not the first person she had rescued from her. Yet the fact that she was going to sing at this party made me feel uncomfortable. I tell you, being in Britain can make you hypersensitive. Or maybe it is the nation's sensibilities. It's easy to give offence out here, and it's even easier to take it. For some reason it seemed a cliche to me that Teta was going to sing, as if it was to perform her blackness. I am black, and I can sing. But Teta was not done with me, oh no. As they got to the door, she looked back at me and said, "You're lucky, aren't you?" I knew she was not asking about my name. Teta was too sneaky for that. She was accusing me of being lucky. Lucky that I knew where I came from. Lucky that I knew my parents. Lucky that I was so privileged in my blackness that I had questioned hers. She saw that I understood what she was doing and smiled. "Lovely name." And she stepped out. The bitch. In that moment, I was aware of being alone in Annabelle's house. There was such silence I heard the house being outraged. The corridor stared, mouth open. The kitchen, its appliances, the food, everything acted like they were the nation. I pushed the cake away, sucked my teeth deep and prolonged, African style, and hurried out. I sat at the back and watched Teta sing Havana Nagila. There were no traces of the earlier confrontation on her face whatsoever. She never looked at me again. I wondered whether she was one of those floating souls who once in a while made a landing. That day she had anchored on me, rattled me, and took flight again. Annabelle saw me sitting alone and came. "What are you doing hiding at the back, Lucky? Come sit with us." I smiled. She was blissfully unaware of the nation at her party. If I had explained what had transpired between me and Teta, she would have perhaps thought it was a storm in a teacup. Cool, so that was The Nod by Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi, and you can find that in the Bare Lit anthology. And yeah, this really stuck with me, this story, because like many of you, maybe this experience has happened to me before at gatherings where people are clearly trying to work out your history, your origin, where, that question, where are you really from? And I just want you to think if this thing has happened to you before, or maybe you've been the person to do that to somebody else as well. Maybe think that through a bit, and what led you to ask those questions. How did that make you feel? And then what actions might you have taken from that? Can you call somebody out when they're doing that to you, you know? Can you be upfront with them? Or if you're the person who's done that, how can you make sure that instead of accusing people, you can be their allies instead? What work can you do to combat your anti-blackness? Thank you for listening. You can watch and listen to more stories in the 100 Stories Deep series by clicking subscribe on the link below and following on our social medias as we post one every day. Alright, cheers.